What makes diamonds special? What creates this significant desire to have them on us? I have them on my finger, I have them in my ears, but what makes them special? Outside the marketing and the sheer genius of De Beers and their ability to make us desire them, what makes them special? Well, what makes them special is not only their beauty, but their hardness, their ability to withstand everyday life. The reason why you give your wife an amazing diamond isn't just for the fact that it sparkles and blinds people and draws attention to her so she feels like she's special. It's also for the sheer fact that you know if she smacks that on the counter of those glorious granite that you installed to make her smile, that it's not going to break. Because if you put in an emerald or a sapphire or a ruby, those corundums crumble. They can chip, they can break. So what makes a diamond a diamond? Carbon and pressure. Pressure of everyday life is what drives us into becoming the men that are capable of overcoming difficult situations. When we seek the pressure, when we seek the responsibility, when we go out and we look for ways to improve ourselves, to hold ourselves accountable, to become the men that we can be proud of when we die, we become those diamonds in our family, in our communities, in our workplaces, in life. I urge you to go out, put yourself in situations where you can take on the responsibility, where you can be gifted the pressure to become the diamond that you have the possibility to be. All it takes is your choice, your action, your willingness to be committed to yourself. Roll that intro. I want to thank you for joining us on the Man Up and Own It show, where we help men by sharing the stories of other men that have overcome difficult circumstances in their life. And I want to take the moment right now for you to hit that like button, hit that subscribe button, because you know that these episodes might give you a chance to do something different to get the outcome that you desire. And today, the best experience that I could possibly think of when I'm in a situation where I got to shoot it out is going to be shot out with experiences by my new friend, Stephen Powell.
Hey, what's up, man?
It's a pleasure finally getting to meet you.
Yeah, dude. It's a pleasure for sure. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely.
Thanks for having me,
It
man.
was today was a very interesting situation because the guy that was supposed to be on, he thought he had pink eye. He actually texted me and told me that he scratched a retina. But I think that he was doing some precarious act with a beautiful woman and something happened to his eyeball.
That can be trouble.
It could be.
Yeah.
But what experience if it did happen?
The stories we could tell.
Oh, boy. One of my really good friends, I would consider him now, that's helped me accomplish a lot of cool things, exciting moments, and to share that with other men, Shad Hardy.
Oh, yeah, Shad.
Introduced us.
Right.
I had heard a lot of really great things about you.
Yeah.
So it's pretty cool that all of this happened in a very short amount of time.
Yeah, it did. Yeah, Shad and I, we've kept in touch over the last several years by social media, and we met up a couple times. And I think originally we met because I was selling one of my shotguns, and we met up, and he bought one of my shotguns. You know, I had an extra one. I have a couple extra. You know, so
right.
I'm like, so anyway, we kind of hit it off, and we just stayed in touch literally since I think the summer of 2020. I think it was.
Okay, so it's been a minute that you've known him. Okay,
yeah,
cool. So
he's a righteous dude.
Why do you sound like Shad? You're absolutely right. And, he's a man that I respect. And it's cool that this experience right now that we're sharing is being recorded because it speaks in loud volumes to that idea.
Mm-hmm.
We have a mutual friend that saw the value in us meeting
Right.
and introduced us, and now we're creating greatness.
Yeah.
So out there to the people that I would recommend, think about your friends, think about who would be a good partnership or a collaboration and how we can do great things. And we got some really great things planned for the people at Phoenix, actually.
Oh yeah, I agree.
But that'll be left for you to find out later. So now, dude, let's get started on this journey of you.
Okay. Woo.
Can we start where would you like to start?
Well, I was born at a very early age,
Oh,
but we
boy.
can speed it up. We can speed that up a little bit. So I grew up on the East Coast.
Where at?
I grew up in Delaware.
In Delaware.
Yeah, I grew up in
Oh,
Newcastle,
shit.
Delaware.
Dude, tell me about the environmental circumstances of Delaware.
It's bad. It's kind of like Jersey, but not so bad. Not as bad as Jersey.
Okay.
And I left in 1990.
How old were you?
I was 17. I was
You left when
17,
you were
turning
17.
18, going into the Air Force then.
You went into the Air Force.
Yeah, but I grew up literally in like a stone's throw away from the Delaware River, right near historic Old Newcastle, which was
Okay.
established in the the 1600s. I mean, it's a really old
Interesting.
colony.
So you were around a
Colonial
lot
town.
of like history.
Yeah, which really shaped me. It really did. It really helped shape me. So since we started with that, I'll go there. So I grew up in a Christian school. My dad was a preacher. I really enjoyed where I grew up because I went to this private school and we were a little more privileged than public school, and we got to go to all these field trips. So going, if you think where Delaware is, we're 15 minutes from Philly.
Yeah.
So we're 15 minutes from Philly. We're an hour from Baltimore. We're an hour and a half from DC. We're 2 hours from New York. We're 2.5 hours from Gettysburg. And then everything else that's in the mix around there. So we were just, surrounded by American history and the founding of this country. And it did help shape me. My dad was a history buff.
Yeah.
And so that was helpful also. And I got more of a passion for our history, honestly, from Mr. Wilson, my 8th grade school teacher.
That's dope. Tell me about Mr. Wilson, bro.
He was a red-haired guy. He's still out there. I hope you know what? I'm going to get a hold of him so he watches this. Keith Wilson I don't even know how old he was, but he had to be young, when I was an 8th grader, because he doesn't really look that old now, but he had red curly hair, funny. He made learning fun, and I really enjoyed learning from him.
What was one monumental thing that he instilled in you?
I think the first thing that comes to mind was some of my creativity in
Sweet.
writing.
Okay.
Creativity in writing. And I know, believe it or not, believe it was him, because of his anecdotes and because of his humor. It was him that helped me fill up the pages with words and actually be a little more poetic. And then I kind of started gleaning some of our founding fathers' documents, like Washington's and Jefferson's and stuff. I mean, as a kid, it's not like I just dove deep into it. Okay, I was a kid, right? But some of that did help shape me. I don't really think I've talked much about that, but I enjoyed it.
Dive in a little bit more. Did you have a teacher that wasn't that person, that maybe showed you an example of what you didn't want to be?
Wow. Well, I'm not going to name names, but I had a grammar teacher who was, I don't know if she was ever married, but she was one of those. She was one of those very, very strict on grammar and taught me a lot about grammar and doing things properly and paying attention to detail, which is something that resonated in my Air Force days, paying attention to detail. So, I not a personality that really worked with me, but I'm a kid. We're kids when we go to school. What do we know? I mean, they know better than we do. We don't know anything. We just think we know everything.
Right.
But yeah, I had a couple teachers like that. And then I had a couple of teachers that were my music teacher, because I grew up in music and playing the saxophone, and band teachers that really helped spark my creativity. And of course, I'm a guy, I'm not a girl. Guys are much more ADD and much more all over the place. And I'm a very kinesthetic person. So it's very easy to be driven towards sports or music. And, And so that was just, that kind of worked for me. I wasn't a great student at all.
Okay.
No, I wasn't like some straight A student at all. I mean, my parents like cheered when I graduated.
Okay.
They were like, oh, thank God, but I was smart enough to get in the Air Force. So that was helpful.
So that's all right. So you're in the Air Force now.
Yeah.
So
Went
what
to
is,
the Air Force.
what is your role in the beginning at the Air Force?
I was a dork. I was a dork. I mean, I'll paint the cool story, but here's what it ended up being. All right. Went into basic training. They're like, okay, you're an average dude. You can make it in the Air Force. I wanted to go special operations. I went through some of the training. They cut us because our iron level was low because they had too big of a class. And if your your last name started with M through Z, you were cut. And if it was or N through Z, if you were A through M, you stayed. But like we all eat the same shit. We all have the same food. How is that possible that my iron level's low? We're kicking out the push-ups, the sit-ups, the swim.
What? You mean the government didn't tell you the truth?
It's crazy, right?
Dun, dun, dun.
Yeah, so what do you know? You have no stripes on your sleeve, and you're like, okay, well, I want to go to lingual school. I wanted because I tested high for linguistics.
Yeah.
Imagine that. I talk a lot. But they're like, no, the class is full. Well, I want to do this. Now the class is full. Well, I guess I'll be a cop. So I was a cop in the Air Force. That's how I started my career.
You were an MP.
Well, back then it was SP, and it didn't mean shore patrol. It meant security police. Now they've changed it to security forces. But I was a law enforcement specialist, just a dork Air Force base cop. That's how I started off. And I went to Bowling Air Force Base in Washington, D.C., where all the generals live, where DIA is, where it's super political. And I made a name for myself and gravitated to maximize opportunities and get additional training. And it helped. It really helped shape my career and honestly my entrepreneurship and everything else because it gave me a passion for shooting because I couldn't shoot the side of Baghdad when I went into the Air Force.
Interesting.
There you go.
You think, dang, that was... do you think that those teachers that gave you that structure maybe made you suffer a little bit, combined with the amazing red-haired, what's his name?
Keith Wilson.
Mr. Wilson.
Mr. Wilson. Yeah.
It's funny because when we were talking in our text, I referred to you as Mr. Wilson.
Yeah.
So that's kind of cool.
Yeah.
Serendipitous, I think, is the word.
Yeah. That's a good word.
Yeah, right? Mm-hmm. That's a Shad word.
Is it?
Absolutely.
Okay. All right.
I'm channeling my inner Shad for Shad. So Shad, if you're watching this, which I hope you do, hope you're subscribed. That this is for you. This is cool. So in the Air Force, you had the influences of your childhood being a driving factor into your learning how to shoot, which is now probably a big success for you, right?
Yeah. I'll explain it this way. What do rebellious teenagers want to do to prove their parents wrong? They want to go out and be independent. So what did I do? Went out and be dependent on the U.S. government and signed up and try to prove my mettle, and join the Air Force, join the military, which thanks to my father talking me out of joining the Marine Corps or the Army, my dad did not serve. He had a head injury during Vietnam when he was in high school, so he could not serve.
Okay.
But he had people in his network that worked with him that served in all the branches. And it was one gentleman, his name was Wes, and he served in all four branches. And I remember going to his office and like, gosh, this guy's done a lot of stuff. Now, this was during the 80s, so he never went to combat or anything like that. But nevertheless, the man went into four services. He went into all four, not Coast Guard. Okay. But he went into Army, Navy, Marine Corps, and Air Force. He says, I've lived in all of them. I'm telling you right now, if you can make it into the Air Force, if you're able to get into the Air Force is a much better way of life. And I have found that to be very true.
Yep.
Very true.
That's what my father said. He was in the Air Force.
Yeah.
And when I looked at going to the military, he was like, you're only going to the Air Force if you go to any.
Yeah. So funny story. So I was signed up in the delayed enlistment program to go into the Marine Corps. I'm telling you, when I was 14 years old, I wrote to the commandant of the Marine Corps. I was doing all the programs, like what a young teenager can do to be a Marine, right?
Yep.
And they sent me hats, T-shirts, bumper stickers, shorts,
Damn,
PT guides.
They were buying you.
Oh yeah, dude. I was ready to get the tattoo. It didn't even go in yet, right? And then they called me the day before. You're supposed to go to a MEP station, which was in Philadelphia, and I'm in Delaware. And the recruiter's supposed to pick you up at your house and take you there, and you do all your final paperwork. They're like, gosh darn, son, you're a genius. You can do anything you want in the Marine Corps. I'm like, really? I'm not really. Don't get really that good grades, but okay. So they go to pick me up the next day, and they call me like, "Hey, we're on your way. Just by the way, when you get there, after you sign your papers, then we'll tell you what job you can have." Like, hold on, you just told me I could have whatever job I wanted, and now you're telling me
You're going to choose for
you're
me?
going to choose for me. I'm like, "Yeah, I'll call you back." And I said, "All right, Dad, let's go to the Air Force recruiter's office." And then they're like, "Well, yeah, you can get in. You can get some jobs in the Air Force." I could go. I could do anything in the Marine Corps to, yeah, you could do some things in the Air Force.
What they didn't tell you in the Marine Corps is what jobs were available.
No,
for
they
you to
didn't.
do.
They didn't. It's probably standard infantry or whatever. But yeah, that's a funny little story. But I'm glad. I'm glad that that happened. I got to meet some amazing people throughout my Air Force tenure. I met some of the original Tuskegee Airmen.
Wow.
I got to meet President and Barbara Bush. I met Colin Powell. I met Dick Cheney. I met ambassadors and generals of all kinds, and it was super interesting.
So those people, how did they differ from the average person on the street?
I learned something being in DC, and I think it has helped me in my networking ability. Actually, when I came out of my shell and actually became an adult, a real adult, like without a uniform, without stripes on my sleeves or anything, they do want to be treated like regular people. And so the more real that you are with them and don't kiss their ass,
Yep.
the more they want to engage in conversation. That's what I have found. And I've met a lot of famous people in my life. But in the Air Force is where it started. I learned how to understand politics. Like I was going to be a diehard Air Force dude, do 25 years, do 20 years and get out. And after my tenure at, that's my word for the day. After my time in DC, I'm like, wow, this is a whole different ball game. This is very, very different.
Yeah.
There's a lot of backdoor conversations. There's a lot of, back room conversations. I mean, and a lot of conversations that happen over coffee. And this, I'm this dumb dude from Delaware that's learning how to walk in life. I mean, I grew up very sheltered.
Yeah.
I grew up in a very Christian home with a very, very strict school,
Yeah.
which is a blessing and a curse in some ways.
Well, the perspective of life was completely different than it was where you were experiencing it.
Yeah, when you go to basic training, you're with 55 other cats, and they're from all walks of life. And I met this guy from Chicago, and he told me he didn't have a mom or a dad, and I'm like, that blew my mind.
Yep.
I didn't understand. I literally felt stupid because I did not understand that because nobody in my life was like that.
Right.
Well,
it's like
it's an eye opener.
I moved from Kansas to here. When I started to meet like people, like one of the guys I met was a former gang leader. And he spent like 18 years in prison.
Yeah.
And he was out and he was trying to figure out how to fix his life, how to do something different. He didn't want to go back to prison. He had kids.
Yeah.
And hearing his story he was like, I didn't have a dad.
Yeah.
My mom was a crack dealer. I grew up on the streets. I was homeless. I lived in foster care where I got abused.
Yeah.
And I'm like, what the?
Yeah.
And then I start to realize like, we all have problems.
Right.
Some problems are different than others. Some people have more opportunities, but all of us don't know anything when we get started. So we always get the opportunity to choose to do something different.
Yeah.
And he chose to do something different. And through a lot of work and development on himself, now he is a successful dog groomer.
All right.
Dude,
Yeah.
does an amazing job, super artistic. And guess what he found out? People are more willing to spend more money on their dogs than they are on their own children.
Yeah, I can see that.
Especially the old people in Sun City.
In Sun City. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. Wow.
But it's interesting how those things kind of sculpt us. So now tell us about your shooting. Because like lead us into you deciding that this is your thing that makes you special.
Well, I don't like being last. I don't like being second. And I remember barely qualifying in the Air Force just to be an Air Force cop, which is like, that's a very basic pistol qualification. When I look back at it now, I'm like, wow, those standards are really low, right? I mean, higher than some, but not that special, right? And I ended up talking with an NCO, and he let me borrow a gun. This is before I'm 21, right? And he took me to the range and he said, here's the gun. you buy the ammo. And he took me out, and he happened to be on the Air Force pistol team. And we would go and I would just shoot literally the basics, right? Until I could shoot a 10 ring at 25 yards. Nothing super fast, nothing crazy like we do now, because that's crazy compared to what we were doing in 1991, 1992, right? Eventually, I made it on this Air Force police competition team, and we traveled to Kirtland Air Force Base. And this is like circa 92. Okay. And it was a cool thing. I mean, it was all these different challenges, and we did well. We won like best overall team. And before we did that, we were able to go to Quantico and train at the FBI Academy and go through all these different shooting schools and all these different drills. And like we were there, I don't know how many times a week for however many months. It was a long time, but it was there that I went, okay, I can do this now. Like I got more, I mean, 50 some thousand rounds of training or more. We went through an assload of ammo. All right. And I think it's then that it sparked in me, like I wanted to be, do you remember How the West Was Won? Do you remember that show back in the day?
No.
Okay. Well, I'm 51. All right. But my dad loved to watch the show, The McCahans, and How the West Was Won.
Yeah.
And the McCahan, the father, had a son named Luke. Okay. And he was left-handed. And he was a gunslinger, right? And this was like, it's probably a cheesy show if we looked at it and I was like, wow, it's so slow. Anyway, I saw, I remember that as a kid, and yeah, we're shaped by our experiences and what we look at on TV. And yes, I'm the classic American kid who wanted to be John Wayne and Rambo and James Bond and all those guys. Don't forget Bruce Willis and Luke McCahan. Okay. And I'm like, man, I want to be able to shoot a fly. I want to be able to say I am one of the fastest, in my squadron or in my law enforcement agency or whatever, because time moves on, and I've been into other things in law enforcement, narcotics investigations, blah blah blah. But I got a real passion for shooting, and before long, and I'm fast forwarding several years, but before long, it was like, hey man, can you coach these guys? I'm like, well, I'm not an instructor. He's like, yeah, but you can shoot. Can you coach them? I'm like, shit, I don't know anything about teaching anybody. I just do this, and shoot it. And I didn't really understand how to teach, because it is a skill set.
Absolutely.
And I feel very sorry for my very first students that I taught, which were all law enforcement. So they had to sit there and listen to it. Right. but
captive audience.
Yeah. But, I got a passion for helping people, and it really meant a lot to me, because I wanted my other law enforcement brothers at the time, like, look, man, I don't want you to not be able to shoot. Mm-hmm. Yes, there are 5,000 other things that you have to be thinking about as an officer or as an agent. But when it comes down to it, you still have to know how to put out. You got to know how to shoot. Yep. You got to know how to shoot. And based on my good, bad, and ugly experiences, it really helped shape me and develop passion, which eventually turned into a training, for me becoming an instructor with several ratings in Texas and New Mexico. And I got a job with Sig Sauer and worked for their academy and trained overseas and trained all over the U.S., and which have ended up helping me build a shooting facility in New Mexico. So, and I ran my own shooting facility. I built it from the ground up. And that started about 1,600 acres in 2004, and we started building that and got into special operations contracts. So here I am. If you think about what I just told you a couple minutes ago about me being this dorky Air Force guy who became an investigator, who did other things in law enforcement, but still having the ability to teach special operations, pistol craft, and teaching them pre-deployment courses. I can't tell you about their missions because I don't know how to do their missions, but I can damn sure teach you how to shoot.
Yep.
And so shooting flies and bad guys, it's what you need to do, man. You got to be able to shoot flies and bad guys.
All right. So if I want to learn how to shoot fly, what is one tip to get me started?
You have to focus on your target.
Focus on my target. All right.
So, I mean, you really do have to have your fundamentals together, and I talk about it all the time. If you watch some of my videos, I talk about aiming small to miss smaller. And do you focus on the target or do you focus on the target? You have to have that level of awareness and be acutely aware of your front sight or a dot that's on your pistol or rifle or whatever it is, to be able to have that level of precision. And if you can shoot a fly at 5 yards, you can shoot a 10-inch steel plate at 100 yards.
You can shoot a fly?
Yeah, I've got videos of it. Yeah.
Whoa. Well, all right. So this is a whole new world for me.
And I don't mean with a shotgun. Okay. I mean,
I get it.
With a 9mm.
Oh, that's so cool.
There are a lot of other guys that can do it, but I shoot flower stems and do trick shots. And I've been told like you got to do more trick shot videos because I like doing trick shots. Well, yeah. Not that I'm anybody famous. I know other guys that are just like me or whatever.
It's entertainment, right?
It is.
But
it is.
Think about it for me, someone that doesn't actively shoot, that thinks about that as fantasy. Mm-hmm. Now, yes, while it's normalized for you because you have done the repetitions to do it.
Yeah.
Me, I'm like, whoa. Imagine how long it took him to develop the skill set and to be able to successfully pull that off.
Yeah, I think my best was 8 out of 10 in a couple hours. Like, because I lived in New Mexico, we had tons of dairies around us. And if you know anything about flies and white cars, flies were attracted to white, and we had white targets up. And so literally they would land on the target and I would try to shoot it, try to shoot it, try to shoot it. I've got some of it on video and I've posted it.
That's
you know,
so
I thought
cool.
it'd go viral, right? Like, who shoots flies and posts that, right? Yeah, it didn't really go viral.
But you know what, though?
Yeah,
I bet
whatever.
you with what you've built now versus what you had then,
Yeah.
it might turn around and go viral.
Who knows, man? I just keep, there'll always be flies to shoot. I'm sure I'll get more on camera, so it's not a big deal.
There'll always be flies to shoot.
Yeah, yeah.
Dude, so if you had some advice for a man out there, what would it be that you would suggest for him to do to get a better outcome with his life?
In life?
Yeah, just in general. Just a small basic action.
Well, I'll tell you this. We talked about aiming small, missing smaller, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I try to relate because this is who I am. Like, I live in the shooting industry. I love what I do. And I love helping people win and empowering people to win in life and on the range.
Absolutely.
So I'm going to relate gun talk to life. All right. And there's 7 fundamentals, and we're not going to go through all 7 of them. All right. But if I had to tell some people, if I had to tell somebody, you know, how to fix something or how to accomplish their goals, where's your target? What are you focused on? And if you're going to align yourself, setting your sights on that goals, you can have the perfect goal, you can have the perfect bullseye out there, you can have the perfect weather condition, and you can have, oh yeah, my sights are lined up, you know, I'm ready to go, got my crosshairs on the sights. You got to pull the damn trigger. And you have to pull your trigger with precision. 90% of the time, the shooter's error lies within the trigger well. Did you know that? It's not how you stand. It's not how you breathe. It's not how you look at your sight.
Where you pull this trigger.
It's how your front sight is on the target and how you pull the damn trigger. And most people will be hasty and jerk the trigger and flinch, or they're apprehensive in life about how they're pressing their trigger, AKA how they're trying to accomplish their goal, or they spray and pray. They're like, I'm going to hit it. I know I'm going to hit it. Yeah. Success by volume. Well, maybe,
Yeah.
you know, but if you focus on your target, I know this sounds really simple, but I think it does apply. I mean, when you say, no, I'm not going to shoot the bullseye, I'm going to shoot the center of the X of the bullseye.
You define it.
I'm going to define it.
Yes.
Yeah, you have to define it.
Yes.
And then if you don't have the capability, if you do not have the skill to do that, then you have to evolve. And I'm going to go back to 1992 from something that I learned from a shooting coach who taught me. Like, the tactics that we learned in law enforcement, and any law enforcement military guy out there that's been around in the 90s knows that we've had a shit ton of evolution in our training and our tactics, how we approach things. Yes, we're still pulling the trigger. Yes, we're still shooting on the move or whatever we are. However, the way that we stand to instill better accuracy under pressure, as because you mentioned pressure before, the way that we stand, the way that we move, the way that we acquire targets, we have evolved some of that. A lot of that. And I don't stand and shoot the same way that I did in 1992 because I cannot make my time that I want. If I'm trying to do a sub-second draw stroke and shoot the target, okay, that means from the holster to the target in under 0.99 seconds, okay? I can't do what I did in 1992. And here I am not 19, 20, 21 years old, and I am faster now. And I'm not some world record guy or anything. There's guys way better than me. All right.
But you still have the ability.
But I have the ability to do it, and I have the ability to teach others how to do it, which is be able to share the knowledge for helping somebody win, you know?
And that's because you did the repetitions.
And I call them CCRs, correct continuous repetitions.
There we go. Say it again.
Correct continuous repetitions.
I like that. You
Yeah.
just got that lifted.
Yeah.
I commandeered
Great.
that one.
Hashtag it, bro.
Bam. Hashtag that.
Yeah.
Anyways, I do the same thing with fitness.
Okay.
I relate everything through fitness. And if you say you come to me and you're like, Chris, I would really like for my chest to be a little bit more pronounced and to have some shoulders that I could be proud of, that any girl would want to lay her head on. I want to have some arms that I could like flex in the mirror and people are like, ooh.
Right.
Then I would show
Make
you.
your tattoos look good.
Absolutely. Do the booby dance. You know, like.
Right. Yeah.
Anyways, so I know those skills, those techniques, and they also have evolved from when I first started when I was 12.
Sure.
So
Yeah.
I agree. It's always this repetition of how can I be better?
Yes.
How can I improve just a slight amount?
Right. Yeah. And if I may, when you're, and I have a lot of clients that I've got golf guys, PGA guys. I just picked up a lot of people that are doing powerlifting. And so I try to relate what they do, which I suck at golf, but I love to play. So I relate, I know I've been around the gym. I've worked in gyms. I understand that mentality and some of the concepts there. I'm no pro at any of that, but I do understand the basics. And so I try to relate what they know and how I can help them shave time or sharpen the iron, if you will, to help them be able to shoot better, right? And there is a lot of crossover from fitness and into shooting.
Everything in life.
And if you don't have, just like at the gym, if you don't have the frequency, you're not going to have, you can consistently go once a month, right? You can consistently go twice a year or 3 times a year to the gym or to the range, but you're not going to beat the guy that's going to the gym 5 days a week. You're not going to beat the guy that doesn't skip range day.
That's right.
Because when I'm dedicated to my craft, I'm shooting 1,000 to 3,000 rounds a week to do what I need to do to get the times. And I can tell you, if I do a draw stroke drill, a certain move, I can tell you like, oh yeah, that was 1.1, that wasn't 0.9. I can tell you because I live in that time frame of this is what my speed and accuracy need to be. Oh yeah, that was not the A zone. That was just on the line of the A zone, or it was a C zone, or whatever.
I got a question for you.
Yeah.
How many times have you pulled that trigger?
Millions.
But that's what it's going to take. And for the people out there that are resonating with you and that can relate to you and want to relate to you, how can they get a hold of you?
Go to thegunlifecoach.com. Follow me on Instagram, Twitter, Facebook. I'm popular on Instagram and YouTube. My channel's on YouTube at the Gun Life Coach. And I'd love to connect with you. I love helping people win. And I have kind of flipped the script. A lot of training companies that are out there, like, okay, yeah, there's a class on the 15th and they need 15 to 20 people. And I went the way of the personal trainer. I've taught hundreds of thousands of people on the range in my life, from all walks of life, internationally and here in the United States, military, law enforcement, special operations, and an assload of civilians. And I can tell you that because the curriculums that I've developed and the courses that I've developed, I said, you know what? I can take all of this wealth of knowledge and then I can create your curriculum, your package. You don't have to have some $5,000 gun. You just come with one gun and you say, these are the goals that I want. This is what I want to do. And I'm your shooting coach. I'm your personal trainer.
Bam.
And yes, you're going to pay a little more for it, but my time is all about you.
The idea of a coach for us is to speed up time. And Stephen is a perfect example of the repetitions that it takes to accomplish a goal and to do great things with it. So if you want to contact him, find his information below in the details and hit the subscribe button so you can meet more people like Stephen. So you can find out information that potentially could help you do something that you've always dreamed of. I want to thank you for joining us on the Man Up and Own It show. I hope you got a story that helped you accomplish and overcome a difficult circumstance in your life. Thank you.